Hold on, because something monumental has just happened. Powerful forces have decisively moved against Donald Trump, and what we are witnessing has truly never unfolded like this before. In the Capitol's shadowed corridors, where mere whispers can quickly escalate into thunder, a seismic shift is now ripping through the very heart of American power. This isn't just another day in Washington. It's the moment when the facade has cracked and the real battle has begun. By the time this unfolding drama concludes, the situation may well be irreversible, with consequences capable of reshaping the nation's future forever. Senate leaders have just confronted Donald Trump in a tense face-to-face showdown that erupted behind closed doors. Their target? None other than the former president himself, now ensnared in a widening web of legal and political peril. This confrontation was triggered by a bombshell Supreme Court ruling this morning, which rejected Trump's latest appeal on election interference charges. This was no mere discussion. It was a raw, unfiltered clash of wills. The decision was made in an emergency session, a late-night huddle of bipartisan heavyweights who saw no other path forward. Just minutes ago, sources leaked the details. Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, unlikely allies in this storm, cornered Trump in a secure room deep within the Capitol building. The air was thick with tension, voices were raised, and accusations flew like daggers in the dark. Imagine the scene. Trump, ever the fighter, entering the room with his trademark bravado, perhaps expecting a negotiation or a plea for unity. Instead, he faced a united front. McConnell, the veteran Republican strategist known for his steely resolve, laid it out plain. "The games are over, Mr. President." Schumer, the Democratic powerhouse, echoed the sentiment, insisting that the rule of law is non-negotiable, no matter one's station. Trump reportedly pushed back hard, demanding loyalty from those he once called allies, slamming his fist on the table, accusing them of betrayal in a voice that echoed off the walls. But this time, something was different. No one blinked. No concessions were made. The leaders stood firm, their message clear. The era of unchecked defiance is ending. This breaking event didn't materialize out of thin air. It stems from months of escalating pressures, with Trump's legal battles reaching a fever pitch. The Supreme Court's denial of his appeal was the spark that ignited this powder keg, stripping away another layer of protection and forcing the hand of those in power. Election interference charges, long simmering from the 2020 fallout and amplified by subsequent investigations, have now crossed a critical threshold. Prosecutors argue that Trump's actions undermine the very foundation of democracy. And with this ruling, the path to trial, or worse, seems inexorably clear. The timeline is brutal. The ruling dropped this morning, sending shockwaves through legal circles, and by afternoon, the Senate leaders had mobilized. This wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated, a decisive response to a system pushed to its limits. As details trickle out from insiders, the confrontation is described as explosive, with Trump reportedly leaving the room red-faced and furious, vowing to fight back through every channel available. But the leaders' unity, McConnell and Schumer, polar opposites in ideology yet aligned in purpose, signals a profound shift. This bipartisan stand isn't just about one man. It's about preserving the institutions that have held the country together. Whispers from aides suggest that the meeting lasted over an hour, with pointed discussions on the implications for national security, party loyalty, and the upcoming midterm cycles. Trump's team is already spinning it as a witch hunt, but the damage is done. The confrontation has erupted, and the political landscape is forever altered. The immediacy of this event can't be overstated. Just hours ago, the Supreme Court justices, in a 6-3 decision, dismissed Trump's claims of presidential immunity in the election case, citing precedents that emphasize accountability over privilege. This ruling, coming amid a backdrop of other legal entanglements, including classified documents and financial probes, has cornered Trump like never before. Senate leaders, sensing the momentum, acted swiftly. Their action, a direct personal intervention, bypassing public spectacle for a private reckoning. It's a move straight out of political thrillers, but this is real life with real stakes. The Capitol, usually a hive of calculated maneuvers, transformed into a battleground where words were weapons, and the outcome could dictate the fate of a nation still healing from deep divisions. This is not routine procedure. This is not standard political conflict. This only happens when confidence collapses, when the protective shields around a power figure begin to crumble under the weight of evidence and public scrutiny. Institutional behavior now indicates a profound loss of patience, a decisive shift to enforcement, and a clear preparation for force if necessary. The Senate's move today sends an unprecedented signal. The guardrails are being reinforced, and no one, not even a figure as towering as Trump, is above them. In the annals of American history, such direct confrontations between legislative leaders and a former executive are rare. Think Watergate-era showdowns or the impeachment trials. But this feels more visceral, more immediate. It's a declaration that the system is self-correcting, activating mechanisms long dormant in the face of political expediency. Consider the broader context. Trump's return to the spotlight in 2025 after a contentious election cycle has been marked by defiance. His appeals have clogged the courts, his rhetoric has inflamed his base, and his influence has lingered like a shadow over the GOP. But today's events mark a turning point. The Supreme Court's rejection wasn't just legal jargon, it was a hammer blow, affirming that actions have consequences. Senate leaders, watching from the sidelines, no longer just stepped in to underscore that message. This signal is unprecedented because it's bipartisan. McConnell, once a reluctant critic, now openly aligning with Schumer in a display that shatters party lines. It's not about politics anymore, it's about the survival of the republic. Former allies and party leaders are no longer defending Trump with the vigor of old. Silence from key names like Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz speaks volumes. Usually vocal supporters, their absence from the fray suggests a quiet retreat. Insiders within the GOP describe private reactions as panic, with frantic calls for distancing and damage control. Public loyalty, once a given, has been replaced by caution, hedging statements, and quiet exits from the inner circle. One anonymous senator confided that the writing is on the wall, implying that many see what's coming. A cascade of accountability that could engulf the party if they cling too tightly. This betrayal, or turning point, depending on your view, carries deep political meaning. They see what is coming, potential indictments, trials, and a reckoning that could redefine power dynamics. McConnell's words in the meeting, "The games are over," weren't just rhetoric. They were a eulogy for the era of unconditional support. Schumer's reinforcement about the rule of law adds a layer of inevitability, signaling to Democrats and Republicans alike that the center must hold. Trump's accusation of betrayal likely fell on deaf ears as leaders prioritize institutional integrity over personal allegiance. In the halls of power, whispers of "enough is enough" are growing louder, with committees like Judiciary and Oversight gearing up for hearings that could expose even more. The fallout is already rippling. Trump's base is mobilizing on social media, decrying the deep state conspiracy, while moderates in both parties breathe a sigh of relief. This turning point exposes fractures in the GOP, where figures like John Thune have had tense conversations with Trump over policy divergences, hinting at broader discontent. The silence from key groups, think the Republican National Committee and major donors, indicates a hedging of bets, preparing for a post-Trump landscape. Private reactions, leaked through aides, paint a picture of alarm, conference calls buzzing with strategies to mitigate electoral damage, with some even floating ideas of formal distancing resolutions. Politically, this means the loyalty test is failing. Trump's demands for fealty are meeting resistance as leaders calculate the cost of continued association. The betrayal stings, but it's pragmatic. Survival in politics demands adaptation, and today's confrontation is the catalyst. As one insider put it, we're not jumping ship, we're riding it. This shift from defense to detachment could accelerate Trump's isolation, forcing him into more aggressive postures that only deepen the divide. This action activates enforcement mechanisms that could lead to profound legal and power cascades. Contempt proceedings loom if Trump defies subpoenas or court orders, potentially escalating to seizure of assets, freeze orders on finances, or even arrest warrants in extreme scenarios. Removal processes, though not directly applicable to a former president, could manifest in barred candidacies or stripped privileges. One move now forces the next through legal obligation and automatic triggers. The Supreme Court's morning ruling has activated a chain reaction that Senate leaders clearly anticipated when they moved to confront Trump directly. This is no longer discretionary politics. It is the machinery of accountability grinding forward with inexorable momentum. The rejection of blanket immunity claims means prosecutors can now proceed without the shield Trump sought, opening the door to contempt proceedings if he continues to resist subpoenas or court directives. In parallel, civil suits tied to the same election matters could see asset freezes or financial restraints imposed to secure potential judgments. While outright arrest warrants remain a distant escalation for now, the legal architecture is in place. Violation of court orders could trigger bench warrants, and repeated defiance might force marshals or federal agents into action. Possible outcomes now include a full cascade. First, accelerated trial scheduling in federal district courts, with judges under pressure to move swiftly given the public interest. Second, parallel state-level actions, particularly in Georgia and Michigan, could synchronize with federal timelines, creating a multi-front legal siege. Third, congressional committees already primed may issue new subpoenas or hold emergency hearings to probe compliance with prior orders. The confrontation in the Capitol was the visible tip. Beneath it lies a web of enforcement mechanisms designed to close escape routes. One senior Judiciary Committee staffer described the mood as methodical inevitability. The system is no longer reacting, it is executing. Institutions are acting in coordination, speed, and near total silence, outside of the initial leak of the confrontation itself. This suggests a shared belief that resistance is weakening and that the moment to act decisively has arrived. Behind closed doors, the strategy phase has clearly shifted to containment and isolation. Key players, DOJ leadership, FBI counterintelligence units monitoring potential security risks, and select intelligence community figures, are believed to be in regular, secure communication loops. The objective appears twofold: control the narrative so that public perception remains anchored in rule of law principles and prevent any sudden escape maneuvers, whether rhetorical, legal, or otherwise. Sources close to the leadership describe late-night calls between McConnell's office, Schumer's staff, and White House counsel veterans who remain influential despite the change in administration. The consensus: Trump's pattern of testing boundaries has reached a point where further accommodation risks institutional legitimacy. Therefore, the posture is now about damage control, protecting the Senate's own credibility, shielding vulnerable members from blowback, and positioning the body to weather whatever public storm follows. There is even quiet discussion of prepositioning procedural tools, rules changes to expedite contempt referrals, funding adjustments for investigative staff, quiet briefings for sergeant-at-arms personnel in case physical security measures become relevant. This coordinated quiet is itself a powerful tell. In past crises, impeachments, special counsel probes, public posturing was constant. Today, the silence is deafening because the actors believe the outcome is increasingly preordained. They are not debating whether accountability will arrive. They are debating only the tempo and the optics. Trump's inner circle, by contrast, is reportedly in disarray. Some aides are pushing for immediate, fiery public statements. Others are urging a more measured retreat to preserve negotiating leverage that may no longer exist. The gap between the two camps is widening by the hour. The Capitol confrontation was not an isolated emotional outburst. It was a deliberate signal flare meant to be seen by every relevant player: the courts, the executive branch holdovers, the donor class, foreign capitals, and most importantly, the American public. By choosing a private setting rather than a public floor speech or press conference, leaders preserved deniability while maximizing shock value when details inevitably leaked. The message is unmistakable. The protective perimeter around Trump has been deliberately breached from within the very institutions he once counted on. Expect public defiant statements within the next 12 to 24 hours. Trump's pattern is well established. When cornered, he doubles down with sweeping accusations, rallies loyalists, and floods the information space with counter-narratives. Social media barrages, truth social posts labeled urgent or breaking, and likely a primetime live appearance are already being prepped. Emergency filings will follow almost immediately. Motions for reconsideration at the Supreme Court, parallel emergency stays in lower courts, perhaps even creative venue shopping attempts to slow the machinery. Counter orders are also probable. Public calls for congressional investigations into weaponized justice departments, demands that GOP leadership censure or expel members who participated in the confrontation, and renewed pressure on friendly state attorneys general to open mirror probes against perceived perceived political enemies. Global reactions will begin to crystallize within days. European capitals, already wary of American democratic backsliding, will issue carefully worded statements reaffirming support for independent judiciaries. NATO allies with upcoming summits may quietly adjust talking points to emphasize institutional resilience over personality-driven leadership. Markets, ever sensitive to U.S. political instability, could see short-term volatility, especially in sectors tied to government contracts or regulatory relief that Trump once championed. Currency traders are already watching for any sign that confidence in American rule of law is eroding. The power struggle has decisively shifted. Politics, enforcement, rhetoric, mechanism, loyalty, survival. What once played out on cable news panels and campaign trails now moves into courtrooms, grand jury rooms, and secure government conference facilities. Trump's most potent weapon, narrative dominance, is losing potency as concrete legal deadlines replace open-ended debate. His base remains fervent, but the broader electorate, exhausted by years of turbulence, increasingly views endless conflict as a luxury the country can no longer afford. That sentiment gives cover to institutional actors who might otherwise hesitate. Inside the GOP, fissures are widening. Moderates and institutionalists see today's confrontation as a necessary course correction. Hardline populists view it as unforgivable treason. The tension will likely manifest first in closed-door conference meetings, then spill into public rebukes or abstentions on key votes. A small but growing number of senators are privately signaling they will not defend Trump in future floor speeches or committee markups. The calculation is cold. Association carries rising reputational and electoral risk. Trump's team faces an acute dilemma. Aggressive defiance risks accelerating the very enforcement cascade they are trying to slow. Measured retreat risks alienating the base that remains his primary source of leverage. The middle path, quiet negotiation, appears closed after the Senate leader's unambiguous stance. Every option carries peril, and the clock is no longer on Trump's side. International institutions are now watching closely. NATO briefings already include contingency language about U.S. domestic political continuity. The United Nations, usually cautious on internal American matters, has seen quiet soundings from member states concerned about precedent. If the world's oldest continuous constitutional republic appears to struggle containing executive overreach, what message does that send to newer or more fragile democracies? Key allies, United Kingdom, Germany, Japan, Australia, are believed to be consulting legal and intelligence counterparts to game out second-order effects on bilateral cooperation, especially in domains requiring high trust, such as signals intelligence and sanctions enforcement. Credibility damage is already measurable. Foreign ministries that once treated U.S. commitments as near certain now insert qualifiers. Markets are pricing in a small but non-trivial governance premium. Higher yields on U.S. treasuries, modest dollar softening against safe haven currencies. Security repositioning is underway in quiet ways. Allied militaries adjusting exercise schedules, intelligence sharing protocols adding layers of verification. Risks compound quickly. Diplomatic isolation is not imminent, but no longer unthinkable if escalation reaches constitutional crisis levels. Market shock could deepen if trials produce daily headlines of defiance, contempt citations, or asset seizures. Most dangerously, any perception of selective enforcement, or conversely of impunity, would erode trust in the U.S. legal system abroad at precisely the moment when Washington needs maximum soft power to counter authoritarian rivals. This is no longer a story about one person. This is a test of the system itself. Whether the Constitution's guardrails, battered but intact, can still function when stress-tested by a charismatic figure who commands fierce devotion from millions, yet faces mounting evidence of rule-breaking. Outcomes now narrow to three broad paths: enforcement that restores equilibrium, collapse of public confidence leading to deeper polarization, or historic confrontation that forces a reckoning unlike any since the Civil War or Watergate. After this moment, nothing returns to normal. The confrontation has stripped away the last veneer of normal politics. Trust between branches, already thin, has been further eroded. Public faith in institutions hangs by the thinnest of threads. The situation is now accelerating out of containment, racing toward a denouement that historians will dissect for generations. The republic endures because ordinary men and women in extraordinary moments choose mechanism over personality, procedure over passion, country over faction. Today, Senate leaders made that choice. Whether the rest of the system and the public follows will determine whether this chapter ends in restoration or rupture.